actually coming out, so they do not want Mass to get his hands on that for Game 2.
Yeah, he was very effective with it in Game 1. I'd say FlyQuest should be actually brimming with confidence. I really do actually want to double back on that. Even when you win these close games that feel messy, it can still be a sign that you are a better team. Because during that Game 1, for Immortals, we threw up the stat that their even percentage in game was at 57%, which means 57% of all their game time, the game is in a even state with very close gold. Yet, they lose most of their games.
Yeah.
So there's still something that Immortals isn't converting in that late game that's preventing them from being able to win, and they need to be able to solve that stuff if they want to make the playoffs.
And one big difference in this draft going forward is that FlyQuest are now going to have the Ashe. We have talked many times today already about how much of a problem she can be and how strong she is, and also just how flexible she is in a variety of different compositions. But IMT deciding that the Ezreal is the champ that they want to remove, and then going with Sejuani, Corki to kick things off.
Yeah, the Corki picked themselves, so taking that away from Quad, and I wonder what the pick is going to be. Now, he's played a lot of... Okay, there it is.
All right.
Played a lot of AD carry options in solo queue, Zeri being one of them, so he's going to lock in the Tristana. It just feels like, at least this one, Tristana is deprioritized only because Ashe was available, but we're just seeing a lot of our teams in the LCS this day not really caring too much about the Tristana nerfs.
Yeah, and obviously FlyQuest are one of those teams that we had talked about how good they actually have looked with this AP jungle AD mid style in a lot of their games. Inspired in particular seems really, really comfortable and confident on it when they can get pushing lanes. And Brand, we kind of highlight as one of the AP champs where we definitely didn't think the nerfs were really going to affect his overall power level.
And we got the note from our stats guy that if FlyQuest ends up winning this series, that will clinch Team Liquid in playoffs.
Yeah.
So Team Liquid just watching with bated breath. I mean, they can lock that in at any time, to be fair. They're playing that well, but it's nice to see that playoff implications are already being solved this week.
It's because Liam built the machine to do it for him.
It's true.
When I look at the standings, I'm like, how the heck, with Team Liquid of 4 wins, can we guarantee that 2 teams are going to have 4 losses? His machine has done it.
It's already there.
If this happens, if Immortals gets another loss, it guarantees that at least 2 teams will end the split with 4. Either way, we're deep into this Game 2 draft. The Tactical Ziggs is going to be another throwback. That means they can most likely try and get a fairly aggressive top lane champion for Castle, especially with the Sejuani. I think they're going to be looking for some type of either melee blind or counter pick, because that's what gives them the most overall threat for a strong team comp.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what they do here, taking 2 supports off of the board, and then FlyQuest taking off 2 top lane picks. I am curious to see what they're going to save that last counter pick for.
Might be, I mean, the 4 pick might be Bard. If you're going with a Ziggs bot lane, you're going to be seeing a lot more roaming from Olleh, and it was hilarious that Busio is the one that picked the Bard last game. Now it's going to be, he's hovering over the Leona, and it's just been one of the better support picks out there, and especially if it's going to be Olleh on an engaged pick. Inaro's mentioned that he's sort of the X factor in the team. If he sees an angle, he will go for it. So there's going to be trust from the IMT side to really look for it. So I like this draft so far from IMT, and it's kind of enabled Olleh to start moving and roaming.
Castle Gnar again, I think, would be a nice pick, actually. Camille is another one that I had my eye on. I don't know if you want to actually play that against Sion. FlyQuest could also be moving into some weird lane swap world now that they have Sion and Trist on the same team, even though it's a mid lane Trist, but...
Yeah, it's actually set up really well for a lane swap if they want it. And FlyQuest coming out, other teams had identified, like, they were so pro-swap at MSI. They were the team that was probably going to stick with lane swaps the most. So that's something IMT are going to have to look out for as we see the Gnar hover coming in. Your pick might come to fruition, Jet.
He did the most damage on the team with it last game. He's going to be able to farm damage off that Sion pretty much the entire side lane game. It also balances the AD for the team comp. So another solid-looking draft for Immortals. And honestly, whenever I see Brand and Sion next to each other, just the color palette makes me excited for the draft. So I just like the colorfulness of the FlyQuest team.
Okay,
what do you think?
I mean, it's fair. I never really think of it that way, Jat.
Fair enough. We've gone off the rails. It's time to send it to the casters. Raafaa, what do you think?
Well, Jat, I'm a big fan of the Sion being locked in. He got one of those small buffs during the patch notes for 14.14. The W going from a scaling of 10 to 14% max HP damage at max rank is now just a flat 14% max HP at level 1. So this gives him a little bit better trading power, especially against any champions that are going to be stacking a bunch of HP in the laning phase, especially during early on. But the
It did include a stolen Baron from an Ezreal. It required a showdown at a 4th dragon at which Immortals could have gotten Soul.
Yep.
So it definitely, I think, got a lot dicier than they would have wanted. They did dominate that last fight, and definitely that was not close. But FlyQuest looking to get an easy 2-0 here to clean it out. And we'll see if Immortals can take a game to try to keep pressing, you know, find a way to get these wins.
Yeah, and I liked what Jat mentioned at the top of the draft as well. Just it's important for Immortals to not let the mishap around the Baron be a huge mental hurdle for them to overcome. If they just remind themselves like, hey, we had a really solid early game 1. We just need to replicate that and just execute better in, you know, those late game situations.
Yeah, and that's kind of what they've been working on all year long, and that's the difficulty, right? Is that it's clearly not an easy solve for them. They have strong laners. They are not just getting blown out of the water. They are, you know, staying close in all these games, but at the end of the day, it's like, does that matter if you end up losing anyway, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of that feeling of, well, how do we fix it, right? Quad, you know, has been really, I think, improving quite a lot for FlyQuest. This is someone who, he came in, I think people were pretty negative on the change overall because, you know, a lot of people were kind of like on Team Jensen, right? You know, Jensen was kind of getting some hate from Inspired and Bwipo. People felt unfairly, especially after the finals. And so people were like, well, it's not really fair that he got replaced. You know, what's up with that? So I think naturally, people kind of felt more negative about his replacement because of that. And Quad came in. I think he had a pretty quiet start. But as we can see, statistically, he's performing quite well. And I think he has really been kind of like warming into this team. He's looking more and more confident. You know, he's able to kind of find those angles to go for big plays when it is appropriate. And quite frankly, he's just a really solid laner. You know, we saw when FlyQuest went up against Dignitas, he was beating Jensen on both sides of the matchups. He was really looking strong. So I do think, you know, this is a guy with a really bright future, and he's someone that hasn't really been talked about a lot because he has not really been, you know, the star of this team. But I think that could change by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, every time that Quad gets playtime, you know, whether it's against Dignitas or against G2 during the EWC, he even looked pretty darn comfortable against Caps as well, and that's one of the the best mid laners in the history of the West.
So the Western Go right there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if you can hold your own against Caps, I mean, then, you know, there's only up to go from for Quad as we continue the rest of the split here in the LCS summer. As
Castle is giving Bwipo the hands right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the level advantage, 3-2. Bwipo is pushed off the wave.
Yep.
Armao is on the top side of the map. He's finishing Krug, so I don't know if he's going to get to Bwipo in time to maybe look for a dive.
I think it would be tough, you know, against a Sion, but maybe if he has him really, really low, you could go for that. But that's one of the nice things about Sion is that even if you do get dove, you can likely use your passive to kind of clear this out. They're going to scout. They see that the jungler is not there on that side of the map. It is cleared up, so we'll see Armao likely to start this one out.
Armao engages with the Winter's Wrath, immediate flash by Bwipo, and Armao walks it out. Just one more auto attack from Castle, and clean dive only at the cost of one flash from Armao. First blood drawn for Immortals.
Yeah, nicely done there by Immortals. They make the dive happen. Thankfully for Bwipo, again, utilizes the passive, gets the entire wave, and then can just TP straight on back. So he's not going to lose too much, but of course it is still that gold injection for the Gnar. And we'll see if Brand can make any sort of an answer on that bottom side. He is clearing that bottom scuttle. Likely to just reset after this and just continue that power farming, but we'll see where he wants to go.
I already like this change from Immortals. We saw that Castle had a pretty sizable lane advantage against Bwipo in the previous game as well on the Gnar, but Immortals didn't really play towards it. This time Armao shifts up his early game path, goes towards the top side, and now there's a sizable lead here for Castle in the early game. I want to see how much more can Immortals actually play off of that advantage and continue snowballing it into the mid game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it is a nice little lead there for Castle, who, as you say, you know, had a strong game. Again, people were predicting pretty heavily in the FlyQuest side. I'm curious if chat would change your predictions at all, you know, with the first blood going over to Immortals. Do you actually think that's going to shift the game, or are you not really that concerned about it as a FlyQuest fan? Here's the dive one more time. Armao just starts it off with the W here. He then lands the Q guaranteed once it is kind of point blank. Flashing out already actually, I think, took the tower shot, so didn't really need it, but we can hear Bwipo's comms on this.
Actually died easier than I thought I would. My bad.
Seju's flash. Yeah. Let's get this.
So just a little bit of surprise. I guess he thought he could play that a little bit differently. Wasn't quite as tanky as he was expecting.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I always find it interesting, because a lot of times when you talk to pros, a lot of pros don't really play tanks in solo queue. You know, they play a lot of the more carry style. They practice on their mechanics and so on. But to me, so much of being really, really good on a tank is understanding your exact limits. How much can you frontline before you need to back off? You know, when can you actually make it all in happen or take a trade even as a tank?
Yeah.
You know, when can you survive a dive versus when do you need to leave? All these little things matter so much and are so knowledge-based. And so it's these things where it's like, yeah, it's not that hard to play mechanically, but you have to know exactly when and where you can be.
Sure.
And that's sometimes what makes a difference. So maybe Bwipo just hasn't played that much Sion lately and was a little bit surprised by how much damage he took.
And meanwhile, for FlyQuest, during that time, Inspired did set up some vision proactively in the bottom side jungle, so now that he is able to use the priority of Massu and Busio to start up this dragon, it is the first one of the game, and Grubs have just barely spawned, or they will spawn now. So this is really strong tempo from FlyQuest. I don't know if they'll have a chance to contest for Grubs right away, since they're down to flash on Bwipo and Castle's already here, but at least this makes it so that the dragon stacking is a lot earlier for FlyQuest.
Yeah, absolutely. They got a really fast first dragon. Armao is just going to take that second one. They hear the Sion ulti. They say, you know what? You can have one. So they will back it off.
Nice.
That ward, unfortunately, was never spotted by Armao. The sweeper timed out literally right before it was about to actually reveal that, because he wanted to obviously check Sidebrush and Pixel and so on. But flash in.
And Olleh is leading the charge once again onto Massu. He's kiting this one out so far, not needing to use the flash. Quad went in, trying to get a reset, but he doesn't get it, so he's forced to flash over the wall. Busio in trouble, but he has the magical journey to get out.
Yeah, everyone able to get out. Not that much damage, really, on a lot of these champions. You know, you're looking at the Corki right now. He's got, like, cloth armor. He's got a tier. A lot of them aren't really that lethal at this point in the game, so going to be able to survive. Not too hard.
A little dicey there. Now, the fact that Massu did not burn Flash is going to be good for his lane setup in case Immortals try to look for somewhere to punish. Meanwhile, for Quad, he did have to burn Flash, and now, if I'm Immortals, that is target numero uno.
Yeah, you definitely can look for him, but at the same time, Trist is so evasive, so even if you land something like the Sejuani ult, it's pretty easy to buffer your rocket jump to kind of jump away after that. So we'll see if they do want to target him, because yeah, Massu does have his flash, but if you land any CC, like a Zenith Blade connects, you get the stun, then the Sejuani ult comes, everything kind of follows up there. Potentially you could burst him down, so I can see arguments to really try to attack either one. But regardless, you want to see Armao with his ult, with level 6, either punish the missing flash or that missing cleanse.
Yep.
Utilize that window to try to get something done.
It's all about the proactivity that we saw glimpses of from Immortals in Game 1. They need to continue it going into Game 2, whereas FlyQuest, for them, the engage tools are really now limited to Massu, Busio, and Bwipo this time around. As we approach level 6 here, Armao has ulti available, Quad potentially looking juicy. Let's see if he can buffer that. Throws out the Glacial Prison. Nicely timed by Quad.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of the easiest ones to do. So that's why I don't love going for the Tristana in that spot. Bwipo got some good trades on Castle. You know, he caught him in mini with the full charge Q coming out of the brush, and then that just gives you such a chunk of health that it's tough for Castle to really kind of trade from there. You end up as Gnar in this matchup a lot of time, just kind of fighting the Sion's mana bar. And since Bwipo is just about you know, you can kind of sustain and stay around very likely. You're not really at a high risk of being dove here.
Now, Bwipo might be in trouble.
No ult.
Armao is here for the play, and he flashes away. He's going to try to get away from Castle, but with the Hyper Proc passive, he gets movement speed from it, and Bwipo is getting run into Immortals' own jungle, so it doesn't look like Bwipo's going to get out of this one. It'll just be an eventual kill. Now, you just got to be careful about okay. Got to be careful about the undead passive from Bwipo, and all of them run Skelter, make sure that they do not give a trade back kill.
Yep, they are able to get that kill. Honestly, I'm a little surprised Bwipo even flashed because he didn't have the ulti. If he had the ulti and you flash, then ult to mid lane or whatever, you can probably get out of there.
Yeah.
But it is tough, especially because you know, E doesn't even slow Sejuani when Sejuani has that passive up. So you know, you are able to just kind of walk through that E and chase down Bwipo pretty easily. So second kill there. Of course, you do make Castle maybe miss a couple minions as he was kind of chasing away from that wave, but Castle in a good spot. And thought Busio was going to go for the Cosmic Binding, try to be annoying, but decides not to.
It definitely would have been very annoying for Castle if Busio had managed to stop the recall. But he's going to walk back topside. And since Busio's here, Massu has also joined the top side of the map for a new lane assignment, just trying to pressure down this tower, which still has, can't read, it looks like 4 turret plates. 4 looked like a 2. I need to change my glasses, bro.
Time to hit up the optometrist.
Yes, sir.
The Grub's going to be spawning up here pretty soon. Trist gets that trade, but Chabbies are complete for Mask, so Mask really not too worried about it at all. Inspired, though, able to move in, take away some of these camps. He has just been power farming. Did obviously make the 1 pit stop to take that dragon, got 1 grub. So if he can get all these grubs, would be really happy about it. But we can see Armao is moving over. Castle also does have that Gnar fully charged up, so we'll see if Immortals want to take a crack at them as well.
Yeah, Olleh also dinged 6, so has Solar Flare available for engage. Quad goes in on the Mask, immediate Valkyrie as a response. The Tempered Fate is sidestepped by Mask as well, so he is totally fine, not needing to use the flash. As Immortals now trying to see if they can take that information and challenge the Grubs.
Yeah, Castle still does not have any Gnar bar, so I think he wants to push out 1 more wave, maybe start charging that up. As obviously he made it out not too long ago, but Inspired is going to leash the Grubs and try to pull him down as Bwipo, excuse me, no, that's actually Quad now TPing out towards top. As Bwipo is still just scrapping with Tactical. Tactical's really low. That's actually getting pretty dicey down in bot lane.
Throws another bomb in there. Tactical has teleport in case he is called towards the top side of the fight. Still has Mega Inferno Bomb, but Bwipo's going to stop him from getting a chance to recall. Meanwhile, Mask teleported to the top river to help with these Grubs. Doesn't look like FlyQuest is going to get any of them away from Immortals. That should be all 3 of them going for a total of 5.
Yeah, it's looking good. They're going to be able to get the first 2 off the initial Grub spawn, and they do get all the way up to 5. You have Ziggs as well, so anything that helps your sieging is going to be extra nice, as you can chunk those things low. Great ulti in, but an even better buffer there from Quad. Again, really one of the strengths there on Tristana, as you have that buffer. It's so powerful against so many abilities if you time it well.
Yeah.
It gets them out to safety, no problem.
I'm just going to say it, Azael. I think, you know, the Riot game designers, when they thought they hit Tristana with the nerfs, like, all right, this should take her out of the meta. They look at today's LCS games like, guys, we need to look at her again. She's still being played!
It's interesting. I thought the Q changes were going to matter more than they ended up actually mattering, because they did make the Q cost 50 mana from 0. They increased the base mana by 100, so basically you can press it twice, and then any times more than that, you are at a pretty significant deficit. But people so far, not really being pressured. It hasn't really been a big deal. There has mostly just been kind of Corki Tristana farm fest. So if that's all you're going to do, you're not really pressured to constantly be pressing the Q for trades and things like that. So has not really done much to push either of them out. Corki has gotten a number of nerfs. They also nerfed Absorb Life, which was targeted at these champions specifically to try to make that more of a late game rune and try to make it more difficult for them to be able to stick around in lanes. But so far, Corki and Trist pretty resistant to those nerfs, as Massu just barely missing Tactical with the ult.
Yeah, and I think it's just because the players are adapting. I don't remember what Jensen ran on his Tristana for his runes, but Quad is going with Fleet of Footwork and also rushing a Vamp Scepter item as well. So that means that he has more sustain to make up for the lack of the sustain that you lose from that Absorbed Life nerf. So it's just adaptation from the teams and just making sure that they can still play Tristana.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the Corki is going to be going, the standard kind of tier 2 boots rush, tier build, etc., it doesn't really matter that much that you're delaying your first item power spike by grabbing a Vamp. So if you feel you need that for lane, hey, it's fine. You can still scale in towards the late game. Bwipo here took obviously the early 2 deaths. There is a Triforce down on the other side, but so far he's kind of chilling, and Inspired is coming down here. Looking to see if they could find anything, but we'll just back it up as going to look towards this dragon here, I think, while meanwhile Immortals going to be trying to take that Herald on topside.
Yeah. Olleh does catch Busio, but can't really threaten his life just by himself. He's just making sure that Busio can't get into the pit and stall the Rift Herald take. The second dragon is getting burned down by Inspired on the flip side of the map. I don't think there's going to be any chance for a contest from FlyQuest to stop Immortals from taking this Rift Herald, so it's just another exchange of neutral objectives. The second dragon, hang on. Bwipo's coming in with the ulti. It is smited by Armao, but
didn't get the eye.
He needs to pick up the... Okay. That would have been so tragic if they could not actually get the eye. Inspired's is going to get a decent amount of damage done, but nothing lethal.
Yeah, they ended up chasing after Olleh. I feel like they should have just stayed on the eye and pushed out Armao, but they thought they could get a kill on Olleh. Instead, they do force the flash. So then you're kind of like, all right, which would you rather have, the flash or the denial of the Herald?
Sure.
And it kind of becomes, a little bit of a question about that. But it is, at the end of the day, just basically a trade of topside versus botside objectives. Both the Dragons did go to fly, whereas the Herald and 5 of the Grubs, he's just dead. Oh, wow.
Nice
the w
timing from
midair.
Bwipo. Holy moly.
That was really close.
Yeah, and he just TP'd to the bottom side of the map as well. His ulti's not coming up for quite some time. So Castle should have enough time to knock out this tier 1 on the bottom side of the map.
Yeah, going to be working away on that. Second Triforce completed on the Immortals side, as it was picked up there by Mask. So going to be able to finish this off. One more auto will do it. And that is first tower, actually 15 minutes and 30 seconds in. A pretty slowly played game. I'm curious in chat, which do you prefer? The 2 Dragons or the 5 Grubs and the 1 Herald? It's kind of that question of, do you want to work towards Soul, or do you want maybe, turret pushing power and the early game kind of gold advantage that you could potentially get there?
I will say, with Trinity Force users on both Mask and Castle, it definitely seems like 5 Grubs and Rift Herald seems super ideal for you. You can run a 1-3-1 with this composition, and if not, at least a 1-4 where Castle is just burnishing down or demolishing turrets on the other side of the map, and that forces FlyQuest into this conundrum where if Bwipo cannot get strong enough to withstand Castle in the side lane, then FlyQuest are going to have to start forcing unfavorable fights for them just to make sure that Castle doesn't take their entire base.
Almost everyone is saying Grubs. I saw a few people saying depends on the team, which I think is fair. If you have a really heavily scaling team and you think you can work towards Soul, then maybe that is more valuable. It definitely looks like most people are on the Grubs. The Grubs just feel so good to use, honestly, in your games. They are so nice, especially if you can get the double Grubs on, if you can get actually all 6. But 5 and a Herald is a lot of early gold.
That's a flash from Mask, but the Temper Fate will land if Bwipo can get in range to look for a Q, but Olleh is doing everything he can to buy time for Mask to get out, but the Pyroclasm lands anyway. They managed to trade one back onto Busio, but it's still a 2-for-1 advantage for FlyQuest.
Yeah, Castle is pushing down on bot. We'll see if he can get anything there. Looks like not really, as Quad just going to take the Hex Gate out to defend that tier 2. They do get chip damage on the tier 2 top, but they can't actually finish it off. And unfortunately for them, is going to be a 1 fight for FlyQuest thereafter. Still the 1,000 gold lead here for Immortals. Again, using that Valkyrie to try to dodge out from the arrow obviously was good, but I think he just didn't realize that everyone was over the wall there, and then a really nice Tempered Fate from the Bard allows him to stack in to follow up. Almost got 2 for 2 back. His Inspired got pretty low as well, but still at the end of the day, FlyQuest fighting back, getting those kills, and likely going to take the tier 1 top here, as that is incredibly low.
Yeah. Olleh and Mask are going to try and catch the wave after, but yeah, that turret should be falling in favor of FlyQuest. That's 2 turrets now versus the 2 that Immortals have already taken on the map so far. So the gold lead is still, once again, very even. And Immortals are still building around that advantage of having Castle super strong in a side lane, building towards that Black Cleaver so he can deal with Bwipo, and hopefully for Immortals, force FlyQuest to send more than just one person to deal with Castle in a side lane.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to look for him to try to make some sort of a play. I mean, FlyQuest now back in the gold lead. Was about a 1.5K, maybe 2K, a little bit less than that, kind of at its highest lead for Immortals, but that has gone away. And so FlyQuest now in a great spot. Obviously, they have really strong scaling. Trist mid, Brand jungle, Sion's going to be really a beast. And they did get those early 2 dragons. So again, it is Hex Tech Soul. They're playing double AD carry. It's going to be tough if they do give those over. So Immortals are going to have to find a way to really step up in team fights to try to get something done. But Mask, not that strong yet. Ziggs, obviously, you have some poke, but it's going to be tough to work through some of these frontliners. We'll see if they can really get something done. But I feel like there's a ton of pressure now on Castle to try to get something done in side lanes.
Yeah, and then the question becomes, is it so desperate for Immortals to bring Castle over into a fight? And if they can, it comes down to how well the Mega Gnar is being managed, the Rage Bar being at the right place at the right time. Otherwise, they should seed these fights and continue to give space and buy time for Castle to work through these turrets. And We know that previous problems for Immortals just came down to indecisiveness and being able to execute when the time came for it.
Well, they're trying to rush this Dragon, so we'll see if they can make it happen.
5k HP on the Dragon. Inspired steps up. 4k. Glacial Prison goes wide. Doesn't hit Inspired. Hits Busio instead. They're going to turn right onto Mask and Brute Force through the front. Mask gets picked off. Tempered Fade right onto Armao. Castle is bullied off of the fight, and he's about to go Mega, but it's a little too late now since Immortals don't have any other members that can really follow up, as Inspired smites the Dragon, and Castle is pushed back into the corner, gets one Gnar ulti off and will at least delay the inevitable death from his side, but FlyQuest just making it look so easy to win this fight.
Man, FlyQuest are just so much better in the 5v5. They are slamming Immortals when it comes to these setup fights. It was really nicely played for them, approaching from multiple angles. You know, Quad, I loved how he played that fight. You know, he just goes over the wall here. You know, Armao throws out the ulti. Quad just jumps in the pit here, and it's just straight in onto Armao, because look where the rest of Immortals are. They're kind of on this top side. Ziggs is totally separated from the team, not even a part of the fight. Quad goes in, pushes out the jungler, then they're able to find the CC over onto Mask. They're able to burst him down, and that is the end of the fight. Tactical not really ever involved. Olleh not really ever involved. Immortals just not coordinated in these big moments. FlyQuest decimate them. Now up 2K, now on Soul Point, and this series very close to looking over.
Yeah, and even though the gold advantage doesn't look that massive for FlyQuest, it's just the conditions are so good for them that it's hard for them to not close out this game state. As FlyQuest now transitioning their map advantage over to the top side, setting up that vision. Armao doing his best to challenge, but right now, there's only a couple wards that they've managed to brute force their way back into their own jungle quadrant, while FlyQuest taking their recall for now, and they should be able to redeploy on the map as Armao forced to flash, Q's over the wall to safety, but now down to Summoner Spell. Olleh caught in the middle of all 5 members. Super Mega Inferno Bomb, decent damage down on Inspired, but Olleh still falls. Castle looks for the ulti, but Flash by Quad dodges it. Now Castle's in trouble. Mask trying to fire over the wall. Maybe he can find one onto Inspired, but the Tempered Freight from Busio will save his jungler for now. Tactical is forced to flash in to decimate the jungler of FlyQuest, but now Tactical is overextended, and he's in trouble. And the Cosmic Binding sets up another kill for Tactical as Armao tries to come over the wall to bail out his bot laner. Tactical is able to Satchel Charge over. This is such a scrappy, a messy fight, but FlyQuest are still running the show.
Yeah, Tactical trying to run for it. We'll see if he can get out of there. Is going to be able to hexscape back to safety, so does survive. And will actually TP over towards mid lane to try to cover here. Massu does have to be a little bit careful, but going to be fine as both teams will disengage. Very, very scrappy fight here. The start of it was looking really good for FlyQuest, honestly, but Mask got so much work done over the wall, pushing out Quad, killing off Inspired. That made a huge difference as Armao, you know, kind of gets caught out in the jungle. They're pushing back. Olleh decides to go in, but he is just one man alone against an army. Gets taken down there. Then as Castle pushes forward here, you're starting to think, okay, this re-engage is going to be so good for FlyQuest, but Mask over the wall gets the Frost Bomb onto Quad, pushes him out. The Baron actually aggroes on him, which kills him. See, Rocket Jump, and I think the Rocket Jump itself actually hit the Baron. He was too close to it, so did actually end up aggroing it. And Mask kills off Inspired. So Mask kind of saved this play pretty massively there. And Quad knows he made a bit of an oopsie there with the Rocket Jump.
It looked so clean for FlyQuest for a bit, but I will say that despite Immortals not having perfect setup on the fight, they made it almost even in terms of the trade. But now that Armao is down to Flash, would have to send a one-way ticket into the pit if he wants to challenge for a steal. Bwipo and Inspired are currently burning down the Baron, but they're ready to turn since Quad and Busio are already looping around through the right lip of that pit. And Castle is about to go Mega, trying to hunt down Bwipo. Glacial Prison goes really wide. Tactical zone out of the fight. He doesn't have Flash, so it's not safe for him to step up. He has to go back around that other wall as Bwipo zones off Castle. Temper Fate is huge onto the back line for 2 members. Cosmic Binding forces Mask to Valkyrie away. Massu still maintaining position in the mid. Olleh gets finds a member onto Massu, but forces him to flash away. Busio able to magical journey out, and now they're repositioning for the fight. Bwipo steps up alongside Inspired. Massive damage. The Pyroclasm is going to do so much work. Look at the health bars dropping, and Quad comes in for the resets. Goomba stopping every single one. FlyQuest just picked up an ace for nothing.
5 for 0 there for FlyQuest. Oh my god, the start of the fight was looking pretty good for Immortals as Castle chunked Bwipo out so low, but Bwipo is able to actually immune the Mega Gnar ulti with his own ulti, gets out to safety, Warmog's back to full, rejoins, and FlyQuest take over the fight. Inspired got so much damage done across of all of Immortals, and this has got to be pretty much lights out for this one. They're going to base. We'll see if they can actually get out to the Dragon to try to fight for Soul as well, because they do have those Hex Gates, and they have those Barret-empowered recalls. But we're going to watch this fight one more time, but we got to be quick and get back towards Soul. So here's this initial play. Castle going very aggressive onto Bwipo. Watch the ulti here. This timing from Bwipo, so good. Anticipates the ulti, reacts to it, immunes it. Then the Warmog starts kicking in as he's healing back up. They land this stun over on the Mask. They're pushing him back, but we're back to live, and we're back to a fight for Soul.
Dragon is aggro to Bwipo, leading the charge against Armao. Castle looping around on the left side, has Mega Gnar starting to build up. Inspired sees him on the ward, tries to zone him out. Castle about to go Mega, 7,000 HP in the Dragon Pit, 5K. Busio looking for an angle with the Tempered Fate, 2K HP. Armao trying to burn this Dragon down. Tempered Fate goes in, but Armao gets the smite. Castle whiffs the ulti on Inspired, but as you call it out, Quad is just destroying the inhibitor in the mid lane, and FlyQuest, if they can stop the ports, they can just look to end the game. The arrow doesn't hit, Tactical gets out. The TP saves Immortals' game and their base from crumbling, but FlyQuest are still going to look to hunt down more members from Immortals as they try to turn onto Massu under the tower. It's a good pick from Immortals, but they lose Olleh in the process. Bwipo still leading the charge, looking for Mask. They know that he doesn't have flash. Quad jumps in. Glacial Prison is great for Armao. Mask is still surviving. The explosive charge finally takes him down with the help of Inspired, but Busio and Bwipo are super deep in between these two towers, and FlyQuest have overextended their welcome since Tactical is now here to join the fight and will push Bwipo off.
Man, FlyQuest are just diving past the tier 2 there. Bwipo was tanking it up, but they didn't have that much damage, and when Quad goes down, they turn on him. It's just an Inspired as their only damage. Immortals do stay alive, but that was very close to being the end of the series. If that Ashe arrow hits Tactical, I think it's actually lights out for the entire series. I think Quad can just commit to trying to finish the game. The Ashe arrow just barely did not hit the TPing Ziggs. And then it just became all about the collapse, all about the fight. Quad, Hex Gates back out of the base to rejoin his team, and they try to dive past that tower. Ends up going astray. They don't really challenge on the smite here. You can see Inspired way over on the side, not even really in range, as Castle was kind of zoning him out, looking for the Mega Gnar, which again, unfortunately, hits nothing. Castle has not been very effective with those ults, unfortunately for him. Just well played there by Inspired. And that arrow, a tiny bit down, a couple pixels down, it would have connected, and maybe the game's just done.
Yep. But FlyQuest still have a massive advantage that they surely should be able to close the game with. Yeah, they did not get Dragon Soul, but Immortals are facing such a heavy, heavy gold deficit right now that any fight that FlyQuest just forces, they could win outright just through the power of Wall of Diff, as Bwipo already transitioning his power from mid into the jungle, and they might pick off Armao here. He has flash, but the CC layering does not give him a chance to get out, and Castle could be next. Bwipo stepping up. The Q is interrupted by Castle's wallop. He walks out. He has the flash, so he's still safe, but FlyQuest continuing the siege into the base.
Yeah, able to get an easy pick there onto Armao, who was trying to get into his own jungle, maybe get a bit of vision, try to clear out some wards, but at this point in the game, FlyQuest is so strong. And as a tank, when you're going up against this kind of a comp, you are going to melt. It's a 3-item Massu. It's a 3.5-item Quad. And that is a brand jungle. So these guys are going to melt you incredibly fast. The fact that they gave that camp over probably means the LDR is complete as well for Quad.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're probably not giving those camps over as the brand. And there is the LDR purchased up for Quad. So FlyQuest have absolutely everything they need to try to finish this one off. They could look for an angle to try to find some picks. If you don't find the picks, you just play towards these objectives that are spawning here in 2 minutes.
Armao arrives in the blue buff quadrant, but it is very dark for the side of Immortals. There is absolutely no coverage for them So it's going to be very difficult if they try to walk in blind once Dragon spawns and they have to contest FlyQuest on that soul point. For the rest of Immortals, they managed to sneak a couple wards in, but it's immediately taken out by FlyQuest. It's back to that blanket of darkness as Busio might be in trouble. He just magically journeyed into the blue buff pit, forced to flash away. Bwipo is tanky enough that he can withstand the onslaught from Immortals as they're just poking. No real committal engage for the side of Immortals yet.
Yep, not going to commit too hard to anything. They know if they lose a fight here, if you just take a random fight before an objective, you lose, that's it. The series is over. So they're trying to hang on, trying to find some sort of a miracle angle. It's likely got to come off of a steal or multiple steals, some sort of big mistakes over from the FlyQuest side because they're just so far ahead. They're in an incredible position to finish this one out. Immortals kept it close for quite a while. In fact, we're at a decent little gold lead for most of the early game. But similar to last game, when it comes time for these big important fights, they just seem outmatched. FlyQuest are better organized, they're more coordinated, they're outplaying on an individual level in these 5v5s as well. They seem to just really know how to set up for these fights and how to execute on them.
Yeah, and it's definitely nice for FlyQuest fans to see a more composed FlyQuest squad after what we saw in Game 1, since Immortals had such a huge lead, and it seemed like that game could have easily been won by them as Armao tanks up the initial CC. Oh, wow, the Onslaught of Shadows, or Bwipo's ulti, gets in there, and goodbye, Mask. He is done for. Olleh is going to be next. Quad getting the resets as Massu picks up another kill. Inspired just zoning off Armao, forcing him to flash, while the rest of FlyQuest just run down the rest of Immortals. About to be a 5-for-0 ace. FlyQuest, I mean, what can else we say, Azael? This was the expected outcome. Immortals had a decent look in the early game, but FlyQuest just showing up as the better team.
Yeah, I mean, you can see Inspired and Bwipo laughing it up on the player cams, feeling good about this one. FlyQuest are going to take the 2-0 over Immortals.
An overall better look from the FlyQuest squad in this game too, as we already talked about the Game 1 being filled with many shenanigans, but they locked down an easier to execute composition, a lot easier accessible tools to use to start fights and really turn things up once this advantage started snowballing for them. And for Immortals, I know it's going to be disappointing for the fans out there to have lost what should have or could have been a Game 1 win, but there's definitely things that they can build up of. For now, we're going to be joining Jat and Bwipo for the interview.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Bwipo. I just heard you said, oh, that was funny. What is this referring to?
No, it's like when I looked at Corki's build, I knew that he dealt no damage to me, and then he hit me with the rapid fire cannon, and it did like 2% of my health. And then he like walked up to follow up on the Sejuani, and I just thought it was hilarious because he thought I wouldn't ult him or something. Like, I don't know. I just knew I won the game instantly when he tried to follow up on that. I didn't even know what it was. I just thought it was hilarious. Like, it's a bit mean, obviously. You put me on the spot here because obviously. Yeah, let me put it this way. People getting paid to play like that, I'm not a fan of it.
I appreciate the honesty. A 2-0 on the day. However, Game 1 did look a little shaky. How did you guys clean things up in between Game 1 and Game 2 to have a solid Game 2?
Honestly, I think that we had a much easier composition. We have a big mean Sion, face-checking everything, and it makes it a lot easier to play range support. I also had a lot of priority in my lane. Not sure why, honestly. I'd have to review as to why I could move so often, but I think me and Inspired connected really well in the game, and he identified super well that Sion moving was important, so they kind of ignored Castle and let Brand bully him out of the side lane, and then when I had moves, it was really easy to face check and play together, so I think it was just a compositional difference. With the poke comp that we were playing in Game 1, I don't feel like we were too comfortable poking before the first 3 Drakes, and as a result, we kind of had to give them. But then we really turned it on for the last Drake, and I'm really impressed by my team. I think that was a really good comeback.
Yeah, it still is a 2-0 at the end of the day, and you guys did lose the first game, the first series of the season to Team Liquid, but you're undefeated since then. So what have you been working on since the start of the season, and maybe even more importantly during the break of LCS?
I think for the most part, it's like identifying everyone's responsibility in the game. I think that's something that we've done really well. I think especially Mithy has done fantastic work with Alan, with Busio. I think he's really coming together as an excellent player, and I think that same for Massu, like teaching some of that discipline, and he's looked fantastic. So I think our bot lanes really enjoyed some of the extra time with Mithy, and I think it really shows. They're fantastic players individually, and now they're kind of finding their role within a competitive League of Legends game, but also within our team. And as a result, I think they're playing phenomenally. And I've kind of just, I've just been working on making sure that I'm on top of the meta and try to find, room and space for people to grow into themselves. For me, it's really important that I support our North American talent and make sure that people know that it's still worth investing in the region.
That's great to hear. And sorry for putting you on the spot, but I was having this conversation earlier. You guys were the unanimous favorites to win the spring championship like a couple days beforehand. And then I feel like perception-wise, you took a big dive with the offseason and what happened in MSI. But now, like, your opinion, being with the team every day, scrimming in every day, that like semifinal going into finals FlyQuest power level versus your power level now, what do you think the comparison is between the two?
I think my individual performance was a lot stronger at that point in spring, and I think that one of the big reasons why we kind of like shit the bed in finals is because I had a hard time dealing with my own anxiety. It's something that I never actually knew I had, but it makes sense that every time I played the finals in my career, a lot of the time I kind of choked, and I get a lot more anxious when it's like a really important finals game or a really important game, and identifying that that's actually a recurring theme and that isn't just me getting unlucky in finals was really a huge step for myself. Yeah. So I kind of had to kind of bite the bullet there, and that's as a result why I think, after so many years of playing competitively, having to admit that I was a big problem as to why I never won a championship was really tough on me. Wow. But I tried to just keep my chin up and practice hard, and like I mentioned, like I want to support my team and do everything I can to support my team and kind of work through that issue myself. As to your question, because I think that context is really important for what we did and what our power level is, I think we're way better because I think when I'm on as a player, I can do a lot of work and a lot of people's worth of work on the map. But when I'm off, or I'm like really stressing or like really anxious for whatever reason, that suddenly stops. So all of that pressure, all of that presence on the map disappears. And as a result, I think my team gets confused because like they're so used to me, like, being wide Bwipo, running around, like the Sion game, for example, I'm walking around everywhere, no one can stop me. And they're so used to that from playing so much that like when I'm off, it's a huge difference. I think that's why a lot of fans also consider me very inconsistent, which is true. In that sense, where when I have a good game, it's like very noticeable I'm on the Summoner's Rift, and when I'm having a bad game, you might want a different top laner. So I'm just trying to figure out how to make sure that I keep a more consistent amount of output, and I tell everyone like, hey, this is me doing more than what is supposed to come out of my champion. I'm just like finding the angle, or I just know what's going on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Are you comfortable sharing kind of how you came? It almost sounds like a revelation. Like, how did you come to this conclusion during the break and so far in the season?
So I work with a therapist, and he's fantastic. His name's Bowen. You probably know him from the LCS PA. Yeah, he's fantastic. And just being able to talk through my entire career, everything that's happened, also my own personal life, and identifying some of struggles I had growing as a person. I'm 25 now. I was a 19-year-old kid. Like a 19-year-old kid, like I was 19, 20, 21, and that's like the three spiciest years of my career, right? Like that was 2018 to 2020. I didn't have time to think about what anxiety was. I was busy prepping for Worlds, it's all like, playing final after final. Like I feel like back then there was no room for that, and I just want to shout out, my teammates back in Fnatic and the people that worked with me that like, they never made me doubt for a second. And, I've come to really be grateful for my time there and what I've been able to accomplish since then. And, like now that I look back at it, obviously, it's easier to look at yourself in a good light and like, oh, I was a great player, I did all this, but I definitely had a lot of room to grow still. And I just came to understand that, I came to understand that as a person, I really didn't get very far. As a professional player, I was a big deal, but as an actual person, human being on planet Earth, I was a 19-year-old kid all along, I was still that 19-year-old kid all those years, and I feel like I've really grown as a person.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for the interview. I really appreciate it as well. Some applause from your team as well. Post-game as well. It's not like you got a whole bunch of time to think about this, so congratulations on the win. Best of luck in the rest of the season and also on everything else. So great talking to you, Bwipo. We're going to send it back to the desk.